Terry Carter, June here from store.ukelikethepros.com. We are going to go over the difference between our basic setup and our advanced setup. And we have a Kala baritone, K-A-B-G, that's been fully set up, and we have a
one straight out of the box as we got it from the factory.
All right, so you're gonna get this card whenever you get something from us. It's gonna have all these boxes, and these are the things we go over. So first on the basic setup is adjust the action at the nut.
Yeah, so the nut is this piece up here, and whenever we say action, that's about how high the strings are above the frets. So we'll go through and we'll file down these little notches that the strings set in to get the strings as close as we can to the frets to where it's gonna be easy to play, easy on your left hand when you're playing chords or melodies, but you're not gonna get any buzz.
All right, the second thing here is adjust the action at the saddle.
So the saddle is this piece down here. Sort of a similar thing, we need to change the height. Some people like a higher action, it means you can strum a little bit harder and you won't get buzz on the frets. Some people like a lower action where it's easier to push down, but maybe if you're strumming really hard, you're gonna hear a little bit more buzz, a little bit more rattle. We try to go for like a medium-low action stock, but if you know what you want, if you have something that you want, we can always do that custom.
And what you'll get too is at the bottom of these cards, we're going to actually give you the height of the strings at the 12th fret. So you know when it left our shop, what it was set at. Now, as I'm looking at these two instruments here, and this one again has been fully set up, advanced setup, and this one has not, I can see at the nut here that the grooves are a lot more filed in and the strings are sitting a lot better than on this one. And if I look down at the saddle here, I can see how much lower this saddle is compared to that one. And again, that just brings those strings closer to the fretboard, makes it easier to play, but without any buzz. All right, the next thing here, again, this is part of the basic setup, is smoothing the fret ends.
Yeah, so the frets are made out of metal, but the rest of the ukulele is mostly made out of wood, including the fretboard, which the frets go into. So over time, the fretboard, if it gets dry, it can shrink a little bit and the fret ends can stick out the sides and those can get pointy. So what we'll do is take a file to the edge of the fretboard and take those frets in so they aren't sticking out too far, and then go over that with a little bit of a sanding sponge to round them off, make them nice on the hands.
And I can feel this one right here. It feels so, like when you're doing your chords or your scales, it just, right now I can feel how smooth this is, and it just makes it real nice and easy to play. All right, and the last thing here on our basic setup is polish the frets and oil the fretboard.
Yeah, so if you look at these two, you can see the difference here. These frets are stock from the factory, and you can see the polish is not nearly as high on these as on these. And also you can see the color of the board. This one's a little bit lighter, it's a little bit dustier. The board's a little bit more dry. It's not had enough oil or wax put on it. So we'll go ahead and polish everything up, get those frets nice and smooth, and then oil the board, wipe it all down, get it ready to go.
Yeah, and you can see, I mean, like June said, how beautiful these frets are, and then how dark and nice this fretboard is compared to that one. So that's our basic setup. Now, we also offer an advanced setup as well, and it's going to really take the ukulele to the next level. So in the advanced setup, the first thing here is refine the nut profile.
Yeah, so this is one of the things that whenever I pick up an instrument, I really pay attention to. You can see on this one that the nut is a little bit taller than where the strings are sitting. Compared to this one, the strings come in and they're just flush. In fact, they're a little bit proud of the top of the nut. And that's what you want. With this one, you're gonna feel the edge of the nut and the top of the nut as you run your hands up and down like this. And that extra height, that's not actually doing you any good. That, if anything, is gonna make it so the strings are gonna stick more in the nut and it's not gonna tune as smoothly. So we like to take that down, round it out, and make it so it's gonna feel good in the hand and tune more smoothly as you go.
Yeah, and I've had customers complain, like if that is sharp, it does affect, depending on what chord they're playing, it does affect their hand. So having that nice and smooth around really does make a big difference. All right, the next thing here in our advanced setup is smooth the nut and bridge corners.
Yeah, so that's sort of part of that same process up here. We take the top of it down, but then we're gonna smooth the corners here so they aren't gonna catch on your hand, it's not gonna feel sharp. We're also gonna do the same thing down here. Sometimes the corners of the saddle can be sharp, so we'll round those off. And on the advanced setup, we actually take the nut and the saddle and we either hand polish them or we take them over to our buffing wheel, and that really smooths them out. And then also on some ukuleles, like these Kalas, when they come from the factory, they've cut these bridges really cleanly. I mean, they're beautifully done, but the edges can be a little bit sharp, and you might feel that on your hand, a little bit uncomfortable. So we'll go through with some sandpaper, smooth that out, make it nice and easy on the hands.
Yeah, and it's such a subtle thing, but if I'm feeling all of that, what we just talked about in here, you can really feel how smooth it is compared to when you grab this one. It actually is pretty rough, so it does make it actually a pretty big difference in not only the sound and the playability, but just how comfortable you are when you're playing.
Yeah.
All right, the next thing here is intonate the saddle, and that's a big thing.
Yes, yeah. Intonation is getting each string individually to play in tune. Each kind of string, each string set, each string within a set are all going to have slightly different properties. And we need to have them contact the saddle at different points, either further forward towards the nut or backward towards the butt of the instrument, to get them to play in tune. When you get a saddle from the factory on something like this, it's in a place where all the strings are going to be mostly in tune, but it's not going to be quite perfect. This saddle is just straight across, so they all have the same kind of contact point. So what we do is we go through, we check with the tuner, we see how sharp or flat each one is, where we need to move that point to, and then I go through, or Randall goes through with a file and some sandpaper, and carefully we adjust the top of the saddle to change where that point is that the string contacts.
Yeah, and you can actually, if you looked at this ukulele and that one, you can actually see where the string hits that saddle is actually different, and that all helps the intonation. All right, and then the last thing here is, and this one I actually didn't know, I'm glad you explained to me, rewind and stretch the strings.
Yeah, so with nylon strings in particular, you don't want to have too many winds of strings on the posts. You know, sometimes you'll see if you've had a ukulele for a while and keep tuning and tuning, you end up with all this string up there. Or if you put on a fresh set of strings, same thing can happen because the nylon strings will stretch out. But if you've got a lot of winds up here, that can actually make it so your instrument doesn't stay in tune as well, or it takes longer to settle into tuning. So what we like to do here is, on a new instrument like this, take all the string tension off, rewind the strings with just enough extra slack to where you're going to have a good amount of winds on there. Your string is going to last a nice long time, but it's probably going to stay in tune a little bit better than how it would be stock.
And if you look at this, I mean, these have a bunch of wraps on it, and then this one, which June restrung, I mean, only has like 2 or 3 wraps.
Yeah, which is what you want to see. You're always going to have a little bit more of those on the plain strings compared to the wound strings because the plain strings are stretchier. But you know, there's a balance that you want to hit, and so we try to hit that here. So
that's the advanced setup. Now, that doesn't always solve everything. Once in a while, even after doing all of that, we still get a little fret buzz. And so when somebody has an advanced setup, we want to make sure it doesn't have that fret buzz. So the next thing here says additional work on the card is level or crown the frets.
Yeah, so all of the frets need to be in alignment with each other. If you think of the neck as sort of plane here, all the frets, the tops of them should be sitting at about the same level. If one of them is too high or too low, you can get buzz. Like up here on this one, you can hear how that's not really clear compared to down here. That note's nice and clear. So we'll do a fret level on the instrument where we take a sanding block that's specially made, machine flat, and we'll level out all those frets, take out any of the high spots or the low spots. And then once we do that, we have to go through and crown and polish the frets. Crowning is taking them from being flat on the top, where we've sanded them down, to nice and round, like you see on there. And then polishing them takes them up from having some scratches that, you know, if you're bending the strings, you might be able to feel it grinds a little bit, it doesn't look great, up to a nice smooth polish where the strings are just going to glide along, your fingers are going to glide along, and it's going to look beautiful.
Yeah, and that actually makes a real big difference on, and some, not all ukes need the fret leveling, that's why it's additional work, but sometimes they do.
Yeah, you know, and even if you have an instrument where there's no major buzz, I am always amazed, even on my own instruments, after I give them a fret level, they just, even if it's a very light level, they just sound a little bit clearer all the way across the range.
Yeah. All right, the next thing here is reshape the fret ends.
Yes. So after you do some leveling, after you do some crowning, and you do the the dressing of the frets, part of that is the fret ends can get a little bit sharp. Or if you've got frets where there's a lot of fret spout, where they're sticking way far off the sides after you file them down, you got to take care of that. You got to reshape the ends so they're going to have a nice transition from the fret top into the edge of the fingerboard. And there's no sharp spots for your hands to catch on. So we'll go ahead and file that down, take care of any of those catching sort of edges, sharp spots. It's kind of like smoothing the fret ends, but I call it sort of reshaping because it's not just a quick run with a file or some sandpaper. There's more involved in it.
Yeah, and like this really does make a difference. You can feel when you're moving up and down the neck. But this is the kind of stuff, and I talk about this a lot in my videos, is when you get an instrument is making sure it's properly humidified, because something like low, dry humidity can cause those frets to kind of pop up as the wood here on the fretboard shrinks. It can be fixed, but it needs to be reshaped.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right, and then the next thing here, and again, this is as needed, so the next thing would be touch up the finish.
Yeah, so when we talk about finish touch up, that's, if there's any little scratches, any little dings, any little marks, discolorations, sometimes we can fix that. Sometimes that's just what the wood is doing. So if it's something where it is a problem, it is something that we can and should fix, we'll take care of that. And we'll take it out to the buffing wheel, or we'll add a little bit more lacquer, whatever it needs.
And it's amazing. The buffing wheel is magic. The buffing wheel is really magic, especially on ukuleles like this that have the nice gloss finish on them. All right, and then next thing, adjust the truss rod.
Yeah, so a lot of ukuleles don't have truss rods. They're much more common in steel string guitars, but they have a very important purpose. You don't actually want the neck of a ukulele to be totally dead flat. A totally flat neck, flat fret tops, will actually buzz more than if it has just a little bit of forward bow. But you don't want too much forward bow, because then the action gets high and it gets inconsistent and hard to play. So the truss rod stiffens the neck. It's this metal rod, adjustable rod that runs through the center of the neck. It stiffens it, but it's adjustable. So you can take a wrench, stick it in the sound hole here, or some will have the adjuster up here, and dial in just the right amount of curvature in the neck. We call that curvature the relief, to get it so you're going to get low action, but as little buzzing as possible.
Yeah, typically in the ukulele world, sopranos, tenors, and concerts, for the most part, a couple brands don't have truss rod, but a majority of the baritone ukuleles like these do come with the truss rod.
And that's really important, because once you start getting to a longer neck with higher, higher string tension, that's when you start getting necks that can bow a little bit more, and so having that truss rod is really going to help.
Yeah. All right, and then the last one here on the advanced setup additional work is balance the pickup output.
Yeah, so both of these, neither one of these ukuleles has a pickup in it, but a lot of the ukuleles we sell do, or we can add pickups into anything that we sell here. The kind of pickups that are most common are called undersaddle pickups. They're these little transducers, these little ribbons that sit underneath the saddle in the slot in the bridge, and take the sound of the strings, turn it into electricity, send it out the cable into your amplifier, and you can plug in anywhere. But right off the bat, a lot of them, one string might be louder than the other. You might have a quiet string. Maybe the bass is more than the treble. So when we're balancing the pickup output, we're talking about going in and making slight adjustments to the bottom of the saddle, to the saddle slot, adding little shims or filing bits away to try to get it so that that pickup is going to have a nice, even, uniform response that sounds like your ukulele and is going to sound fantastic when you plug it in.
Yeah, and that's really important when you are playing. All right, so ukelikethepros here, we do have a basic QC, quality control, quality check that we do on every instrument no matter what. But we do offer that basic setup, and then for those that want to do the advanced setup, and trust me, it's worth it, because these advanced setups can take an hour, sometimes it could take a couple hours, because we want to take it very serious. We want to make sure that, like June said earlier, when you get the instrument, it's going to play the very best it can.
Yeah, exactly. My goal whenever I get an advanced setup is, whether it is on a $100 ukulele or $1,000 ukulele, I'm giving it the same amount of care as if it was a high-end hand-built instrument by someone like Pepe Romero, or one of the wonderful things that Conlea or Koloha are producing. We want everything to be up to that master standard of the peak of performance in a ukulele.
Yeah, and again, you do get this card. We check off everything you do, so you have clear understanding of what you get. And then also, like I mentioned earlier, you get the string height here with it. And as June also mentioned, if you have a particular string height that you like, let us know and we'll do our very best to get it to that level.
Yeah.
All right, so Terry, June, coming at you, store.ukelikethepros.com. We'll talk to you soon.